To start talking about Tulsa than looking back with our stock up, stock down segment
Mhm.
that's presented by crimsoncaptain.com. Tyler, did you know that today, as we record, September 19th, is Talk Like a Pirate Day? How appropriate is that?
Had no idea. Rest in peace, Mike Leach.
Well, we're not going to embarrass ourselves and try to talk like pirates here. Maybe just a little bit. We call it hoisting the Jolly Roger or walking the plank. That's our stock up and stock down for the previous week. I'll kick us off here with my stock up. It's kind of hard to pick one from that Tulsa game, but I would say I'm going to go with Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson, those younger receivers,
Mhm.
because I saw something that I saw in that first game, but I saw it repeated. And that's something that I really wanted to see. I think it bodes well for those guys contributing not only throughout the season, but at least putting some reps together that they can feel confident about coming back to Oklahoma again in 2024.
Mhm.
Transfer portal, always top of mind there. So I love seeing that continued, just reps and more built up there from those young wide receivers. So hoisting the Jolly Roger for those two.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I actually had that number one on my list as well. I'll go a different direction, but I think you make a really, really good point. You see what Jaden Gibson, what Nick Anderson did in the season opener against Arkansas State. Everybody was really, really excited. These guys, as far as we know, it looks like they've taken the next step. Emma Jones has done a fantastic job with these guys. And then you go into week two and you watch this offensive game plan against SMU. And Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson aren't a factor at all. I don't even think they got but maybe less than a handful of targets. I know that they didn't have a reception. And then you fast forward to the Tulsa week, and Nick Anderson has his coming out party. And I know that Oklahoma fans are very, very excited about the potential impact that he can have on the remainder of this football season as it gets underway with Big 12 conference play up in Cincinnati this Saturday. But yeah, stock up for me. I'm going to go to the other side of the football. I'm going to go to the OU defense as a whole. Because of the turnover battle that we won on Saturday. 5 interceptions, the first time that an Oklahoma defense has done that since 2003. And it wasn't just one guy getting in on the action. It wasn't just a couple guys in the secondary. No, you had guys at all three levels of this Brent Venables defense. Gentry, Key Lawrence, Trace Ford, Kendall Dolby, Danny Stutzman, Danny Boy taking a interception all the way back to the house for a pick six. So you're seeing Oklahoma's defense make those competitive plays on 50-50 balls. And that's not something that we saw a year ago. And Brent's talked a lot about that over the last week. And again, you just hope that trend continues as Oklahoma heads up to Nippert Stadium this weekend to take on the Bearcats.
Absolutely. And I think Gentry Williams is the biggest example of that. Like just having your head turned around,
Mm-hmm.
no flag comes out at that point, he makes the interception. There's contact on that play. Like you could very
Sure.
easily call pass interference on that if he's not looking for the ball there. Huge difference. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
it swung the game there right from the start. So you'd love to see that. On the downside, our kind of stock down segment here that we call walking the plank in honor of Crimson Captain. I'm going to go with I think there's some really low hanging fruit on the offensive side of the ball. So I thought, you know what? I'll mix it up. I'll go to the defensive side of the ball. Rondell Bothroyd. He's been good in run support. He has not yet had a sack or a tackle for loss. And I wanted to look back and see how frequent was that in his career. Over the past 2 seasons at Wake Forest, he never went more than, I think, a game or 2 games without either a sack or a tackle for loss. He's done that 3 straight games at OU, so it's his longest stretch in the last 3 years here. And maybe it's Brent Venables' defense. Maybe it's not getting enough playing time. I don't know what it is exactly, but we haven't seen him make that impact play just yet. And he's been playing the 3 easiest teams that we may see all year potentially.
Sure.
So that's concerning. I'm walking the plank on him for right now, but I hope I'm reversing course here a week from now because we definitely talked all offseason about how vital he was and how he was going to really help this defense. And I think he has to some level. I think he's pressured the quarterback, but
Mm-hmm.
we haven't seen that one play that we can point to just yet.
Well, and I think that that's a consistent theme both on the offensive line and the defensive line when you talk about the lack of domination, whether it's Oklahoma in the run blocking or it's the defensive line, getting after the passer. You almost kind of wonder, is that just kind of, what this team is for Team 129? Or do we think that it could be a situation where, yes, they're going to improve over the course of the regular season? You hope that they peak by that second week in October. But I mean, at the end of the day, you really almost kind of have to wonder how vanilla are they being, both in their stunts, both in their protections, both in their blocking schemes. And I think that we're really going to get a much better taste, get a much better sense of what this defensive line, particularly Rondell Bothroyd, is going to be this upcoming weekend. Because again, I know that Cincinnati lost to Miami of Ohio in overtime over the weekend. We'll touch on them here in just a little bit. It's a much better football team that Oklahoma is going to face on Saturday compared to what was put on tape against Miami of Ohio just a few days ago. But stock down for me. I guess you went defense. I'm going to go on the offensive side of the football. This is kind of something that's been, my really stock down for the last couple of weeks. It's the jackhammer package. It's when short yardage plays, they trot Jackson Arnold out there. And this isn't pointed at Jackson Arnold whatsoever. This is pointed mostly in the direction of Jeff Lebby. And I tweeted this out during the game on Saturday. You've got the ball on the 2-yard line. You're the University of Oklahoma lining up against Tulsa. You're on the 2-yard line. You've got Tawi Walker on your roster. Run the damn football. Don't try to get too cute. Don't try to, get Jackson any type of statistics or anything like that. That was really my main, negative that I took away from that game on Saturday. Was it almost kind of feels like instead of just lining up and saying my guys are better than your guys, we try to get a little bit too cute. We try to pull a trick out of our bag, and that's just something that has not worked over the first 3 games of the season. So we'll see what Jeff Lebby likes to do this upcoming weekend. Outside of that, I thought that his game plan was phenomenal against Tulsa. I liked the aggressiveness. I liked the score from far, taking shots down the field, allowing Dillon Gabriel to, kind of push some of those barriers and, give his receivers an opportunity to make some plays in competitive situations. And that's something that I think this Oklahoma offense to get to where they want to go, that's something that's got to continue. That's a trend that, we've got to keep going in that direction. But yeah, get rid of the jackhammer package. He's not Blake Bell. Let the kid do what he does, and that is be a 5-star quarterback. We saw how good Jackson Arnold can be when he gets to run his offense. If anybody has any questions about that, go look at the touchdown pass that he threw to Nick Anderson, where Nick's running full speed, never breaks stride for 1 second. It was that perfectly of a thrown football. But yeah, get rid of the jackhammer package. I'm not about it.
I keep looking down at my phone. I'm distracted by our sponsor, CrimsonCaptain.com. So thanks so much, Captain, for sponsoring this segment and the podcast. And the reason I was looking down at my phone is because he just released some team notes this week. So he's got a lot of interesting tidbits that he's thrown out there on the website, both on recruits. I think he had a note earlier this morning on Grant Bricks. He had a team notes that just came out with some injury updates there. So stuff that I'm not really seeing on other sites that are out there or on Twitter or anything like that. So some pretty good info there just with the insider notes. Also some really great film breakdowns there as well. And the Discord access, which we are huge fans of. So make sure you're checking out CrimsonCaptain.com. He's linked in the show notes, and you guys will not be disappointed there. I want to hear, what are your keys to the game versus Cincinnati?
Well, just starting on the offensive side of the football, I mean, when Oklahoma is on the field, I think that this is probably the one area of the game, and as well as Oklahoma's defense has played over the first 3 weeks of the season, it's what Oklahoma does extremely well and extremely efficient on the offensive side of the football that I think is poised to give Oklahoma some success on Saturday, and that is Dillon Gabriel and these Oklahoma receivers. If you go back, you watch the Cincinnati tape over the first 3 weeks of the season against Eastern Kentucky, Pittsburgh, and Miami of Ohio, the one common factor with Cincinnati's defense is the lack of production and really those 3 teams being able to pick on those guys on the back end of that defense. This is a secondary that doesn't do a lot of things from a schematic standpoint that's going to confuse Dillon Gabriel on Saturday. They really bank on the fact that they've got 2 NFL defensive tackles on that roster to try to hide a few of those deficiencies. And, we saw it over the course of the last couple of weeks. Pittsburgh took advantage of it. Miami of Ohio took advantage of it. I think that Dillon Gabriel, if he can continue to play like he did against Arkansas State and even more so like he did against Tulsa, he's going to light Cincinnati up on Saturday. Because the one thing that Oklahoma's offensive line, and we can touch on the running game here in just a minute, the one thing that Bill Bedenbaugh's group has done extremely well is keep Dillon Gabriel upright and protect the quarterback. If they can give Dillon time to throw on Saturday, name your score for what this Oklahoma offense can put up. So Dillon Gabriel's ability to throw the ball downfield, we see these receivers, Farouk's lighting it up. Andre Anthony's been great for the first 3 weeks. We're seeing more and more from Jaden Gibson, Nick Anderson, Drake Stoops. The dude just makes plays. He's Mr. Consistency. We'd like to see a little bit more out of Gavin Freeman. But ultimately, his time's going to come over the course of this regular season. But yeah, throw the ball down the field. The Cincinnati secondary is no matchup for the weapons that Oklahoma has out on the perimeter.
What a reverse of what we were talking about all summer of basically, hey,
Yeah.
let's not throw the ball too much. Let's lean on this running game. We know it's going to be elite. And so far, like, just not at all. Complete opposite there. And I'm in agreement with you there. Shame on me for not knowing Blaine Gabbert's brother's name and calling him Blaine Gabbert's brother. But he was Miami of Ohio's quarterback, and there was pressure up the middle, but that Redhawks offensive line was able to at least hold it off enough for him to really pick apart that Bearcats defense, not just through the air, but scrambling as well. And I think we'll see some of that. We haven't really seen Gabriel unleash and have to run it so far because our offensive line has been just immaculate in pass protection for the most part, other than that one Savion Byrd just, brain fart of a play against SMU. But I guess not even a brain fart, just an effort, lack of effort there. But otherwise, Dylan Gabriel really hasn't had to scramble. I think we'll start to see some of that. And I think he's faster than any of the quarterbacks that Cincinnati has played so far. Phil Jurkovec out of Pittsburgh really has regressed since he's gone to the Panthers there. So he's not a scrambler at all. He's pretty much a statue back there in the pocket. So I'm excited to see what Dylan Gabriel is able to do. And if he's able to continue to push the ball down the field and play pretty mistake-free, like almost no turnovers, almost no incompletions either. So I agree with you there.
For anybody that wants to go back or has already watched the Miami of Ohio film against Cincinnati, first play of the game for Gabbert was a 79-yard touchdown pass on that Cincinnati secondary. So there are plays to be made out there. I'm very interested to see what Jeff Lebby tries to do to attack this Cincinnati defense. Like we talked about, Adam, if there's one thing on Oklahoma's offense that does give me a little bit of cause for concern, it is our offensive line performance. I know that we've been really, really good in pass protection, one of the best in the country in terms of keeping Dylan Gabriel upright. But for Oklahoma, I think to be as effective offensively as we want to be, especially going up against some of these teams that are going to have much better competition, a higher brand of athletes across the board, you've got to be able to run the football effectively. You've got to be able to pick up those third and shorts, those fourth and runs for Oklahoma to get to where they want to go. And
Tyler, let me ask you this, because we saw 12 running back carries in the first half against Tulsa last week, and we really didn't see a significant uptick in the second half either. You thought that would have been the game to work on it, just make it work, continue to run the ball until it works. We saw a couple of games, I think, where Javonte Barnes maybe went off for 15 yards once or twice, but that was about it. And so it just makes me wonder, why didn't we work on that? Because it's not going to get easier against Cincinnati. It's probably... In my opinion, I think we're not going to be able to run the ball against this interior defensive line. It may be the best defensive line we see all year, but you're going into Nippert, that hostile environment, and you really haven't worked at your running game whatsoever. And so the way I see this game playing out is probably Jeff Lebby's going to try it a few times. It's not going to work. He's basically going to pass it the rest of the game. And that's kind of a scary proposition. I know Dylan Gabriel's been playing good, but I don't want to play without a running game.
No, absolutely. And I think that this is the weekend that you really find out what Oklahoma's offensive line is made of. We always talk about how Oklahoma, you've got to figure things out by Texas. Bill Beanbo always seems to figure out, his starting five, had that rotation of 6 to 7 guys. That way, once you get to the Cotton Bowl, you're firing on all cylinders most of the time. And Cincinnati's defensive line, led by Dante Corleone, who's going to be an NFL, probably a late day one, maybe even a day two type guy. Eric Phillips out there at the defensive end to go along with Juwan Briggs. They've actually got 2 defensive tackles that are going to be wearing single-digit numbers. That's a lot of fun, something to be watching for on Saturday. But Cincinnati's defensive line, outside of Texas, is the best talent-wise that Oklahoma is going to play against all year long. I fully believe that. You dodge Kansas State, you dodge Baylor, which Baylor's, we could touch on that at a different time, what's going on down there. We can also sprinkle in a little bit of Oklahoma State and the fine people down in Stillwater, how things are going for Mike Gundy and that fan base right now. But yeah, you've got to figure out a way to run the football on Saturday. Oklahoma against Tulsa, I think Brent Venables and Jeff Lebby said that they played 10 different guys on the offensive line. Some of that had to do with the score being out of hand. Some of it had to do with, a couple guys getting banged up. I'm not sure if we're going to get a chance to see Savion Byrd this upcoming weekend. You need a guy like that with that type of ceiling, with that size and stature and that, type of athleticism against a strong defensive front that Cincinnati is going to bring to the table. But I think you're going to see not just Troy Everett inside at the left guard position, but from everything that's being talked about, you might be seeing Caden Green possibly even start at the left guard position. And what better way to get your first start as a true freshman at the University of Oklahoma, going against a couple of NFL type guys that Cincinnati's got. But yeah, I don't think that this will be the game that if Oklahoma can't run the football consistently, that it's going to come back to bite them, because this Cincinnati secondary, who, again, they're going to probably play their best game of the year on Saturday. This always happens when Oklahoma comes to town. But I think that Dylan Gabriel and this Oklahoma receiving core has what it takes to be able to take the pressure off of that running game and still put up a large amount of points.
Yeah. Let's hope that we figure that out, because at some point it will come back to bite you.
Are you more worried about Oklahoma's offensive line or Oklahoma's running backs? Because we still, through 3 games, Tawi Walker has been the best guy, the most consistent guy, and he didn't even get a carry against Tulsa, but we still haven't had a running back that's been able to break one, for a long game down the field.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was kind of like, hey, you get a day off, Tawi, for what you did against SMU. Like, we'll need you to stay fresh. We want to get some of these other guys more opportunities. Yeah. But then you gave Barnes a lot of opportunities. You really didn't give Sawchuk very much opportunity, and maybe he's still hurt. But like, why are you playing him if he's still hurt? Like, let's wait until he's healthy at that point.
Sure.
And honestly, like, Barnes looks slow. He doesn't look like he has that quickness that you need. He's not really running through guys necessarily all that much. So
he looks slower than he did a year ago.
Yeah. So I thought Sawchuk was going to be that guy. We haven't seen enough carries from him really to say for sure. Dalen Smothers looks like he has the most twitch out of that backfield. I'd love to see some more of him.
Hands down.
But that's a tough ask for a true freshman to come in and do pass protection. So
sure.
But like, that would have been the game. Like, Tulsa would have been the game to get him a lot of carries and see if you had something there. And I don't know. So I'm worried about the running backs more than the offensive line.
I am too. And again, I think that we're going to get a lot more answers this upcoming weekend compared to what we've got through the first 3 weeks of this regular season. I do want to let OU fans know one stat to keep in mind going into this upcoming game. Cincinnati's strength of their football team is their defensive line. No doubt about it. We can touch on Emory Jones and, kind of how he's elevated that Cincinnati offense over the course of the first 3 weeks. But Cincinnati's defensive line is currently ranked second in the Big 12 in sacks. They've got 10 on the year so far. So if Oklahoma's going to have some success on Saturday, you've got to hold up in pass protection, give Dylan Gabriel time to find Nick Anderson, Jalil Farouk, Andrell Anthony down the field. If they can do that, I like Oklahoma's chances on Saturday offensively.
And they're going to be watching the SMU tape and trying to replicate some of that where,
Sure.
rush 3 because they can, and they have good defenders there, and drop all the rest of their guys. And we saw something different against Tulsa. It was more like rhythm, deep shot, rhythm, deep shot. Like, we saw that a lot with Drake Stoops, a lot more involved, a lot more wide receiver screens, the shorter passes that then worked up to something bigger. And that's what this offense needs to be. Versus SMU, we got away from that. It was constantly looking down the field, versus just using the extension of the run game that are those wide receiver screens.
Well, and also something, too, that Oklahoma didn't do against Arkansas State. They didn't do it hardly at all, if any, against Tulsa. They didn't run any 12 personnel. You didn't see too many 2 tight end sets, and that's been something that Oklahoma has really.
Tight ends.
Well, I'm not sure if you have one. I mean, no disrespect to the 2 guys that are on campus. I mean, they're obviously out there blocking their butts off. But in terms of a pass catcher being a real threat down the field, I'm sorry, but we don't have one on the roster right now. So utilize your playmakers, get your best athletes on the field, whether that's going 4 wide, going 5 wide, give those guys opportunities in one-on-one matchups to make some plays against some of those defensive backs. And I think that if Oklahoma can do that, if Jeff Levy can keep that same mindset, continue that aggressive game plan on Saturday, Oklahoma is going to find some success through the air against Cincinnati.
Awesome. Any other keys to the game you want to run through?
Let's switch over defensively. Do we want to talk mobile quarterback versus Oklahoma defense? I kind of feel like we should, because
it's almost like it's always. I think that's every defense struggles with a mobile quarterback. Like, nobody defends a mobile quarterback well. It's just that it happens to everybody. But Emory Jones is a capable runner. We saw that when he was at Florida.
Well, we saw that a week ago. He went for over 100 yards against Miami of Ohio and had a touchdown through the day. I mean, when you look at what's been Oklahoma's kryptonite defensively over the better part of the last 10 to 20 years, it has been the mobile quarterback, a guy that can break containment, can get outside the pocket, extend plays with his legs. Whether it's turning it upfield for a positive game or buying time for him to find somebody that gets open down the field. Oklahoma struggled with that. And I'm not sure by any means do I think that Emory Jones is a world beater. He's not going to be in contention for an all conference type team, but I do think that he has the ability, and he's played a lot of football, being in his 6th year, to where he can hurt you if Oklahoma loses containment, if they're not assignment sound, and if they lose track of what they're doing, rushing up the field too far and giving him lanes to scramble outside of the pocket. But for me, this game, it's a line of scrimmage game. And for me, Oklahoma's defense on Saturday, if you can do one thing, you will shut Cincinnati down on Saturday, because Cincinnati's rushing attack, they're averaging 240 yards a game rushing, led by star running back. That is, was he junior, number 21, Corey Kiner, 5'9", 215 pounds. Not super speedy, but he does have the ability to make you miss in between the tackles. He's a really tough guy to bring down. If Oklahoma can contain Emory Jones and can bottle up the Cincinnati rushing attack, it's going to be a nice day for Oklahoma on Saturday. Easier said than done. You're going into a hostile environment. This is probably one of the biggest games that's ever happened inside that stadium. Fox Big Noon Kickoff, Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt going to be on the call. Take care of the football, stop the running game, and be clean. And I think that Oklahoma is going to have success on Saturday.
I think the return of Dasan McCullough, which a lot of us are expecting to see, will help a lot. We really haven't seen much. He got injured pretty early against Arkansas State, but he's a vital piece. I think he's a guy that could match up potentially well later on down the road with Jatavian Sanders, the tight end from Texas. So you want to get him some reps, get him some experience out there. And with no Justin Harrington for the foreseeable future, he's the guy at this point. I think you need him, especially because that allows Peyton Bowen to go back into that safety position and probably take some reps away from Reggie Pearson. He's a guy that got burned pretty bad on the double move there.
It was a tough day for Reggie.
Yeah. And that's what we signed up for. Like, we knew what Reggie was when he came from Texas Tech, and we knew he was going to be good in run support, but sometimes a little shaky in pass coverage. So we knew that's what we were getting out of him.
Well, and you want to give Peyton Bowen, and you even want to give Reggie Pearson. I mean, one game does not define who you are. He had a couple of really bad plays. Give him an opportunity on Saturday to get back out there and rectify those mistakes. But I think that Oklahoma, Brandon Hall, Jay Valai are really going to utilize these next 2 weeks against Cincinnati, against Iowa State, to kind of really hone in on who those 5- and 6-man rotations are going to be throughout the course of the secondary, because October 7th, Xavier Worthy, A.D. Mitchell, Jadavian Sanders, Jordan Whittington, the playmakers, that's going to be the best group that Oklahoma is going to face over the course of this season. And you've got to have everything ironed out in the secondary. Everybody's got to be comfortable and confident in what they're doing, because that game's going to be coming up here pretty fast. You don't want to overlook these next 2 opponents, of course, but use these next 2 opponents, kick their ass, but also give yourself an opportunity to gain some confidence and be very, very comfortable going into the Cotton Bowl. That way you can play, not just play hard, but you can play fast, because you're not thinking. You're just going out there and executing the calls that the coaches are making.
Yeah, I think we'll know a lot more about this defense after this game, because Emory Jones is the kind of quarterback that he'll get you at least once. He'll get you somewhere in some way throughout the game.
Absolutely.
And we'll get to see, does that kind of unravel this defense, or do they buckle down and say, no more, not again? Like, fool me twice, shame on me.
Last 2 things for me, Adam, on Cincinnati, then we'll move on to the interview with Brandon here. But for all the Oklahoma fans that are out there on social media, calling into the radio, different things like that are super confident in Oklahoma winning this game by 2-3 touchdowns. And again, if Oklahoma plays as well as they have the first 3 weeks of the season, yes, that is a highly possible outcome. But you look at what the outcome against Miami of Ohio a week ago, where they did suffer their first loss of the game, kind of took some of this, the aura of possibly having 2 undefeated teams in Cincinnati's first Big 12 conference game. Cincinnati outgained Miami of Ohio by 200 yards, and they controlled the time of possession 36 and a half minutes to 23. So, and also, by the way, and we'll get to this part with Brandon, they also had 9 to 10 trips into the red zone. They only scored 2 touchdowns. So a little bit of a look-ahead type situation for Cincinnati, I think they experienced on Saturday, but this is a much better football team than what we saw a week ago from the Bearcats. And I think the thing that excites me the most about this game, and something that I think that is going to paint us a much clearer picture of what this Oklahoma football team is coming out of Cincinnati on Saturday afternoon, you're going to get good on both sides of the football. You're going to have Oklahoma's defensive line who's been outstanding at stopping the running game, going up against the Cincinnati rushing attack that's second in the conference right now. And then you flip it over to the other side, Oklahoma in pass protection going up against that Cincinnati defensive line led by Dante Corleone. It's going to be a really good matchup in the trenches on Saturday for both sides of the football.